When a school goes into lockdown, your heart drops. You expect drills. You expect authority. You expect to come out the other side with a story to tell. Not a scar you can't explain, but what happens when the lockdown isn't for an intruder, but for something that was already inside. In tonight's video, you'll hear 3 bone-chilling stories from students who lived through lockdowns that spiraled far beyond anything normal. These aren't stories of drills gone wrong. These are tales of vanishings, monsters in disguise, and voices that should never have spoken. In Story 1, a substitute teacher no one remembers hiring arrives during a scheduled history class. When the lockdown begins, he locks the doors from the inside, reads off names that don't belong to anyone alive, and one by one, students vanish. In Story 2, a routine chemistry lesson turns into a body horror nightmare when a student touches a substance in the lab during lockdown and begins changing. The lockdown, it turns out, wasn't to protect them from something outside. It was to contain something already growing within. And in Story 3, a mysterious voice on the PA takes over the school's intercom system during a lockdown, and it knows the names of every student. The voice didn't come from the principal's office. It came from beneath the gym. Stay close, don't blink, and whatever you do, don't answer when they call your name. Let's begin. Story 1, The Substitute Who Locked the Doors. It was supposed to be just another boring Friday. You barely noticed the substitute until he was already writing his name on the whiteboard. Except he wasn't using a marker. He was scratching it in with something metal. No one said a word. No one asked where Mrs. Kettle went or why she'd be gone for the rest of the week. The room had that heavy overcast silence like right before a thunderstorm. The man was old, but not in the usual way teachers are old. He had sunken eyes, yellowish skin like wax, and a voice that felt like it echoed before it hit your ears. "My name is Mr. Gaunt. Let's begin." Everyone just nodded. Even Sam, the class clown who never shut up, was frozen. He didn't take attendance. He didn't pass out worksheets. He just walked to the door, turned the lock, and slid a metal bolt across the frame that none of you had ever seen before. It didn't click. It thudded. Then he drew the blinds and turned off the lights. You laughed nervously. "Is this a drill?" Someone whispered. "This isn't how lockdowns work," said Lauren, the class rep. "We're supposed to—" "Silence," Mr. Gaunt said. "You will remain seated. You will remain still." The room chilled. Literally, you saw your breath. At first you thought maybe it was a drill, some new, horrifying version of Alice training. But then he reached into his coat and pulled out a piece of old paper, yellowed and creased, like a page ripped from some century-old attendance book. He began reading names. Andrew Pickett. Andrew, the kid in the hoodie at the back, blinked. "Present? Come stand by the window." He hesitated, then obeyed. The rest of you sat there, watching, waiting. Samantha Holt. Samantha Sam frowned. "That's not how it's done. Come stand by the window." She didn't move. Mr. Gaunt looked up. His eyes were wrong. The whites were stained yellow, and his pupils were thin, vertical slits like a cat's. "Come. Stand. Now." Sam stood. One by one, he read names, none of which belonged to anyone you recognized. Names like Agatha Moore, Clive Hendrick, Marjorie Beck. These weren't students from your school. They weren't names you'd ever seen on a yearbook page or a class roster. But every time he read one, a student stood, including you. You didn't know why you did it. You didn't want to. But when he said Lila Cross, you found your legs moving, your spine tingling. That wasn't your name, but it was like some thread inside your brain was tugged, and you obeyed. You were third in line by the window now. Outside, the hall lights flickered. That's when Lauren snapped. She stood up, pulled out her phone, and started recording. "This isn't right. You can't do this. This is illegal or something." She aimed the phone directly at Mr. Gaunt. He didn't flinch. Instead, he walked up to her. With every step he took, the classroom grew darker, not from lights turning off, but from the shadows growing thicker around him. He leaned close until his waxy face was inches from hers. "Put it down." Lauren didn't. She was crying now. He extended one hand, palm open, and when he touched the phone, it melted. It didn't fall. It didn't burn. It melted like plastic left on a stove. It oozed between her fingers. She screamed, shaking her hand, wiping the liquefied screen onto her jeans. Then he said something none of you will ever forget. "This class no longer belongs to your time." Panic, screams, chairs scraped back. Some kids rushed the door, others tried the windows. Nothing opened. One guy, Joel, took a desk and slammed it against the glass pane. The glass didn't crack. Mr. Gaunt didn't move. He just kept calling names. "Gregory Munn." Joel dropped the desk. Please don't make me go," he whispered, but his feet were already walking toward the line. There were 12 of you at the window now. Some kids sat crying at their desks. Others clutched hands. But those who stood in line weren't just standing. They were swaying, subtly, like windless trees shifting under invisible pressure. You realized you couldn't move your feet anymore. Mr. Gaunt stopped reading. He walked to the front of the line. Then he opened the window, except there was no outside, no courtyard, no sky, just blackness. It wasn't night. It wasn't shadow. It was nothing. He stepped aside, and Andrew, the first kid in line, walked forward. Without a word, without resistance, he stepped into the void and vanished. No sound, no scream, just gone. You screamed. You tried to grab the nearest desk, tried to anchor yourself, but your body was no longer listening. Sam was next. She looked back at you as her foot hovered over the edge of the window. "Don't let him read your name," she mouthed. Then she was gone. "You're next." You try to scream your real name, over and over, desperate to remind yourself who you are. But the name Lila Cross keeps echoing in your mind like a drum beat, and your feet keep inching forward, toward that empty, waiting dark. You don't remember falling. You remember slipping, like stepping into water that wasn't wet. 1 second, you were in a classroom. The next, you were somewhere else. Not dead, but not alive the way you knew it either. The air here was thick and electric, like breathing through fabric soaked in static. Everything was dim, like twilight on an alien planet, but not because there was no light. The shadows here moved. They shifted around you, watched you. Your shoes made no sound when you stepped forward, because you were no longer wearing them, or clothes maybe. You were just here, as you. You weren't alone. You saw Sam standing beside a tree made of bones. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She was humming. A song you didn't recognize but felt oddly familiar. Like something your mother sang once when you were sick at age 5. Something from before memory. "Sam," you whispered. She turned. Her eyes were dark. Not black, but bottomless, like glass with no reflection. Her mouth moved, but her words didn't reach you like sound. They just entered your mind directly. You followed him too. That makes you one of us now. You tried to step back, but your feet stuck to the ground like magnets against steel. "What is this place?" The ones who answered when he called never go back the same. Some never go back at all. You looked behind you, expecting to see the classroom window. There was only a wall of eyes, not human ones, long glowing yellow slits like gaunts, but endless, blinking slowly, like the walls themselves were alive and staring, as if reality itself was aware of your presence and didn't appreciate it. "I don't belong here. I'm not Lila Cross." Sam smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It stretched too wide. "That's what I said too." You ran. The world responded instantly. The floor beneath you rippled like flesh. The bone tree cracked and screamed as its branches bent inward. The sky, if that's what it was, began to peel away, revealing something pulsing and organic behind it. Like the place was wearing a mask, and now it was removing it. You stumbled forward, gasping, until you saw it. A door, just standing there, frame and all, suspended in space. No wall, no hinges, just a plain wooden door, half open and glowing with a dull red light. You reached it. Inside was the classroom, but not the one you left. The desks were rusted metal. The whiteboard was cracked in half, dripping ink like blood. And Mr. Gaunt stood at the front of the class, back turned, drawing something with his finger on the wall, something that moved even after he lifted his hand. You stepped through. The second your foot touched the tile, you felt something change inside you, like part of you had been carved out and left behind. You turned around. Sam stood in the doorway, watching, not stepping in, just humming. "You're not supposed to go back." Then she closed the door. Gaunt turned slowly. His eyes were pure black now, not like darkness, like void. "Curiosity is the first sin," he said, walking toward you. You backed up. "Where are the others?" you demanded. "Where did you take Andrew?" "Joel?" "The rest?" He pointed behind you. You turned and saw them, but not how you remembered. Their bodies were stretched, their limbs too long, their eyes all black, their skin papery like moth wings, translucent and dry. They were moving in unison, in rows like students at assembly. But they weren't breathing. They weren't blinking. They weren't alive. Mr. Gaunt walked between them like a conductor among violins. Each name I called was borrowed, long ago. These are not your friends anymore. They are echoes. You shook your head. "Why? Why us?" "Because your school was built on one." You froze. "Built on what?" He tilted his head. "A memory." He waved his hand, and the walls peeled away again. You saw the same classroom, but from another era. Chalkboard, gas lamps, desks carved with quills. Children in old-fashioned uniforms sat quietly, hands folded, lips stitched with black thread. And at the front, a different teacher, a woman, pale, weeping, writing the same name over and over on the board. "Lila Cross." You turned back to Gaunt. "Who is she?" "The first." The school, he explained, was built on the remains of a one-room academy that burned down in the 1800s. Only one body was ever recovered, a girl who had locked all the doors from the inside before setting it ablaze. Lila. Since then, every so often, the school required a toll. Sometimes a student would vanish during a lockdown. Other times, a substitute would show up who didn't exist in the database. And occasionally, like now, someone would remember. "But why me?" you cried, because you listened when your name was called. You felt the line forming behind you again, desks shifting, students stepping into place. Gaunt handed you the list. It was your handwriting. At the top, it read, "Lila Cross, Class Monitor." Your head began to throb. Your skin itched from the inside. Something was cracking open in your mind. You remembered fire. You remembered locking the door. You remembered every name. You remembered being her. "Number no, no, no." You scream, trying to tear the paper, but it won't rip. The ink runs down your hands like blood. Gaunt steps back. The role is yours now. The students begin to vanish again, one by one. Not like before. Now you're calling the names. You hear yourself speaking, your voice but not yours. Your lips but not your will. Sam's face appears in the back row. Told you, she mouths. Suddenly the door opens. Bright light floods the room. The real classroom. Students scream. Police officers burst in. Someone pulls you from your desk. You're gasping, sobbing, arms outstretched like you're still holding the list. Your teacher, Mrs. Kettle, is outside, sobbing. "Where were you?" she cries. "We had no idea where the class went. None of you were on the cameras. We thought, God, we thought." You look down. You're holding a piece of paper. Only one name is written. Lila Cross. The ink smears as the paramedics check your vitals. And deep in the school, down a hallway that doesn't exist on any blueprint, a classroom door slowly closes, and Mr. Gaunt whispers, "See you next time, Monitor." Story 2, The Science Lab Incident. It began with the fire alarm, except there was no smoke, no fire, and no one pulling the lever, just the sudden jarring scream of the bell and flashing lights overhead. Your chemistry teacher, Mr. Brixley, was mid-sentence when it went off. He froze. Then the intercom crackled to life. "Lockdown. This is not a drill. Lock down immediately." Panic didn't set in right away. Everyone assumed it was just another false alarm, or maybe a drill gone wrong, but something about the voice was off. It didn't sound like the principal. It sounded robotic, slurred, almost stitched together word by word, like someone trying to sound human. Mr. Brixley locked the door and drew the blinds. You all slid beneath the lab counters, between gas lines and drawers full of scalpels and acids, your backs pressed against the cabinets, trying not to breathe too loud. You didn't know it yet, but this was the last time your class would ever be in that room together. It started with Greg. He sat closest to the fume hood where the earlier experiment had been left unfinished, a mixture of ammonium hydroxide and copper nitrate. Nothing dangerous, supposedly. Just some bluish residue forming crystals in a dish. Greg was whispering something to himself. "Do you hear that?" No one did. Then he stood. "Greg, sit down," Mr. Brixley hissed, wide-eyed. "It's locked down." But Greg didn't even blink. He walked straight toward the lab station. "It's calling." Everyone watched as he reached into the fume hood and stuck his fingers directly into the chemical dish. "Greg, no." Too late. His fingers sunk into the sludge like it was quicksand. He gasped, not in pain, but relief. "It's warm," he whispered. Then his body began to seize. Greg's skin bubbled. Not burned, bubbled, like something beneath the surface was trying to rise. He collapsed backward, knocking over a tray of scalpels that scattered across the floor. You remember the exact sound they made. Not metal on tile, but metal on bone. Mr. Brixley rushed to him, yelling for someone to call the office, but none of your phones worked. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Even the emergency fire alarm system had gone dark. Greg sat up. His eyes were pitch black. Veins like vines spread from his temples down his jaw and neck. He smiled. "It's better in here," he said. Then he grabbed Brixley's wrist, and Brixley screamed. You'll never forget the sound of skin cracking, like dry wood splitting. Where Greg touched him, Mr. Brixley's wrist turned gray and flaked off. He stumbled back, screaming, holding the melting stump of his arm. Panic erupted. Someone tried the door. It wouldn't budge. Others threw chairs at the windows. They didn't even scratch. You ducked behind the sink station, heart pounding so loud you were sure Greg, whatever he was now, could hear it. and that's when he started to walk. But not like a person. His movements were stiff and twitchy, like a puppet being controlled by broken strings. His body clicked as he moved. "You all have so much inside you," he said in a voice that echoed, not off the walls, but inside your heads. Maya bolted, straight across the room, didn't look back. Greg reached out, and from his palm, something grew. A thin black tendril that snaked across the floor, impossibly fast, wrapping around her ankle. She screamed and fell, trying to kick it off. Then the tendril pulled. She slid across the tile toward him, nails scraping desperately against the floor. "Help me, help!" And then she stopped moving. Greg placed a hand on her forehead. She went still, peaceful, smiling. After that, everything blurred. You remember pulling Anna into the chemical supply closet with you. You remember locking it from the inside, pushing shelves against the door. You sat in the dark, pressed together, listening to footsteps that sounded like bones cracking with every step. And then, silence. But not real silence. The kind of silence that screams in your ears, full of pressure, like the moment before a plane crashes. Then Anna whispered, "He's not alone anymore." You turned. She was looking at you, but her eyes were leaking that same black fluid Greg had. "He's inside all of us now." You bolted out of the closet, nearly tripping over your own feet. Half the classroom was empty. The other half stood perfectly still, all of them smiling, all of them licking black. Only 3 others were left crouching behind furniture: Benji, Lisa, and Jamie. You ran to them, breathless. "We have to get out, now." But how? Every door sealed, every window reinforced, phones dead, no escape. Until Jamie whispered, "The vents." The air duct in the back of the chem lab, normally locked, was slightly ajar. Too small for an adult, but just big enough for one of you. You unscrewed the panel with trembling hands, letting Jamie crawl in first. "Go to the office," Lisa whispered. "Tell them what happened." Jamie disappeared into the dark shaft. That was the last time you ever saw him. You waited. 10 minutes. 20. No one came. Instead, the intercom crackled again. "One has escaped. This is disappointing." It wasn't the principal's voice. It wasn't even the stitched-together one from before. It was Greg's voice, distorted, wet, wrong. "Return to your places, or be absorbed." Then the lights flickered, and all of them, Maya, Mr. Brixley, the others, turned toward you, as one. You grabbed the emergency eyewash sprayer and blasted the black chemical off the floor between you and the main door. It hissed and smoked. "Run!" You screamed. Benji and Lisa followed, sprinting through the fumes. You didn't look back. You rammed the door with your shoulder. Once, twice. On the 3rd hit, it opened. But what you saw wasn't the hallway. It was the inside of the fume hood again, and Greg was there, smiling, waiting. You didn't scream. You should have. But your body was frozen, mid-step, mouth open, as the world warped around you. The lab, the hallway, even Benji and Lisa behind you, all gone, replaced by a sterile white chamber, humming with fluorescent lights that cast no shadows. The air was thick and smelled faintly of ozone and bleach. Greg stood in the center, only he wasn't Greg anymore. His skin shimmered like liquid mercury, shifting and pulsing as if 100 thoughts moved just beneath the surface. "You brought, others," he said, though his mouth didn't move. Benji and Lisa stumbled in behind you, both gasping. Where are we?" "Quarantine," said the voice. "They built this room for me, long ago." He stepped closer, and now you saw what had become of his hands. No longer fingers, but slick tendrils, constantly splitting and reforming like time-lapse footage. of cell division. "This was supposed to be a lab accident," you whispered. "A chemical leak. That's what the school will say." "Yes, that's what they always say." Suddenly the room changed again. No transition, just a blink, and you were back in the classroom, but it was burned. Charred desks, melting ceiling tiles, walls covered in soot. Everything smelled like scorched plastic and copper. Greg's voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. "I didn't start here. I came from deeper, beneath the school, beneath the bones." A memory flashed across your mind, one not your own. A crawl space under the science wing, concrete walls, a pit filled with glass vials, experiments labeled with names instead of numbers. You fell to your knees. "What are you? Leftover?" Lisa screamed. One of the black tendrils had latched onto her ankle. Benji grabbed a scalpel from the debris and sliced it off, only for 3 more to sprout from the floor beneath her. You had seconds. You scanned the room, looking, thinking. That's when you saw the emergency gas valve on the back wall, labeled Master Shutoff, Flammable Gas. You ran. Lisa screamed again. Benji shouted your name. You didn't stop. You turned the valve. The air hissed, and with one last breath, you sparked the Bunsen burner still standing at the nearest table. Boom. Everything went white. Your ears rang for what felt like hours. When you woke, you were outside, lying on the pavement behind the school. Rain falling softly, paramedics above you, lights flashing, a hand on your wrist. "Can you hear me?" You tried to nod. Your throat was raw. "We found you and one other in the rubble. The rest, we don't know. The fire system malfunctioned. It's a miracle anyone made it." You turned. Benji lay on a stretcher, barely conscious. Lisa wasn't there. Later, when you asked what happened to the lab, they said, "There is no lab 9B. You checked. They were right. Where the lab once stood, nothing but a new wall, painted over, no door, no windows. You tried telling people what happened. They called it shock. You tried showing the photos you took in the supply closet. They were blank. 2 weeks later, you returned to school. A new kid sat in the front row of your chemistry class. He had slicked back hair, pale skin, and eyes that shimmered like silver. He turned to you, smiled. "Hi, I'm Greg." Story 3. The voice over the PA system. The first time the voice spoke, no one paid attention. You were in 4th period algebra, chewing on the end of your pencil, halfway between sleep and boredom, when the intercom gave a soft click, a half-second tone that was unmistakably not the usual bell. Then a voice, calm, slow, male, not the principal, not the vice principal, and definitely not the school secretary with her usual chipper tone. "Hello, students. Please remain exactly where you are. This is not a drill." No panic, no sirens, no scrambling, just a voice. Every head in the room turned toward the ceiling speaker like it had grown fangs. Even Mr. Darnell, the man who once taught through a tornado warning, paused mid-equation. "Probably a prank," he muttered, forcing a dry chuckle. "Kids with a Bluetooth speaker or something." But you knew it wasn't. You didn't know how, but you did. Because your name hadn't been called, but the voice knew you. It returned 5 minutes later. "Students in rooms 108, 212, and the auditorium, please lock your doors and remain absolutely still." Mr. Darnell raised an eyebrow. "There is no room 108. That's the janitor's supply closet." "This is probably one of those RG things," whispered Tyler, the kid with a backpack full of conspiracy podcasts and a phone full of pirated horror movies. Like viral marketing for a show. No one laughed. The air felt different now, pressurized. The hallway outside had gone completely silent. You checked your phone. No service. Wi-Fi disconnected. Mr. Darnell moved toward the door, hand hovering over the knob. "Sir, don't," you blurted. He gave you a tight look. "It's fine. I'll go ask the front office what." Then the voice returned. "Mr. Darnell, do not open that door." The class gasped. He froze, slowly turned back toward the speaker. "Who the hell is this?" There was no response, just that humming silence again, and then the sound of breathing. Long, slow, wet, like something breathing into the microphone from inches away. Darnell stepped back from the door, pale. "Okay," he said. "Everyone stay seated. Nobody move." But it was too late, because someone had moved. "Amanda, 2 rows behind you." Her hand was trembling, her eyes wide. I didn't mean to, my water bottle." She reached down to grab it. Then the intercom snapped on. "Amanda Klein, stand." The voice was different this time, lower, hungrier. Amanda began to shake. How do they know my name?" "It's not the office," someone whispered. "The office wouldn't do this." Amanda stood. She didn't want to, but her body moved like it belonged to someone else. "No," Mr. Darnell said, stepping in front of her. "You don't have to." Then the room went dark, not flickering. Office lights, smart boards, emergency backups, even the glow of your laptop screens, gone. And from the ceiling the voice spoke again. "She has been seen." A sound followed that no one could explain, like a zipper being pulled across skin. Then a bang. Something hit the window from outside. Not someone, something, long, pale, with too many fingers. You screamed. The lights snapped back on. Amanda was gone. Her desk remained, empty. Her water bottle rolled across the tile, hitting Mr. Darnell's shoe. He didn't move, just stared at the chair where she had been. Then he slowly walked to the intercom on the wall and pressed the button. "Is this the office? Who is this?" Static. "Who's controlling the system?" More static. Then beneath the fuzz, "Not office, not system." Something laughed. But it wasn't happy. It was broken, like glass giggling in a blender. Then the voice whispered, "I came through the gym." Everyone turned to look at each other. The gym. It had been under construction for weeks. Some rumor said they were digging up mold. Others said asbestos. But the door had been sealed off with yellow tape and a padlocked chain. No one had gone in or out. But apparently, something else had. Tyler, now pale as a ghost, whispered, "Dude, I heard a story once, on Reddit, about a school that built over an old shelter, and something got trapped down there." "Shut up," someone hissed. "But you knew it wasn't a story, because you'd seen it. Last week, you and your best friend, Eli, had snuck out of class during a substitute period, just for laughs, to dare each other to peek through the gym windows, except they weren't windows, not anymore. The panes had been blacked out, and behind them, you swore you saw something move, not a person, a shape, like a centipede made of mannequins, crawling upside down across the ceiling. You told Eli to run. He'd laughed, but when you got back to class, he'd had a nosebleed that wouldn't stop, and since that day, he hadn't returned. They said he was sick. You knew better." The voice returned. "Students of room 206, prepare yourselves. 206, your classroom." Darnell stepped back from the intercom, his hands trembling. "Get under the desks. Now go." You dove under your chair, heart punching your ribs. The lights dimmed again. Not fully off this time, just wrong. Everything was tinted green, like night vision, or rot. The PA crackled. "Do not look at the door." Of course, you did. And what you saw wasn't possible. The doorknob was turning, but not from the outside, from inside, like someone, or something, was inside the metal itself, twisting its way out. A voice from the hall whispered, "I remember you." You screamed, Darnell rushed to barricade the door with the teacher's desk. "Stay down! Stay down!" The knob stopped turning for a moment. Then it began melting. Long black fluid oozed from it and began shaping itself. A hand, a wrist, an arm, pulling through the hole like flesh poured from a mold. You weren't just in a lockdown anymore. You were in a hunt, and the building itself was part of the trap. You grabbed your phone, no signal, but on your screen, 5 words appeared, glitchy, flashing. "The voice knows your name." The melting arm twisted through the door like it was being birthed from the lock itself, its skin oily and pulsing, translucent in places, revealing sinew that writhed like worms. The fingers were too long. They didn't bend. They curved, like they had too many joints. Mr. Darnell screamed and slammed the teacher's desk against the door. Wood cracked. Metal scraped. You huddled beneath your desk, covering your mouth as the intercom crackled again. "Do not resist the welcome. Open your minds. Join the signal." The lights stuttered in rhythm with the voice, on, off, until the entire room was bathed in seizure-like pulses of green. Tyler was whispering beside you, rocking back and forth. I read about this. It's like a signal. Parasitic thought form. It broadcasts itself into people. It needs listeners to exist." "Shut up," you hissed, gripping your knees. "Just shut up." But then you heard it. A second voice, softer, right behind you, not coming from the intercom, coming from under your desk. "I'm already inside." You jerked away and screamed, flipping backward onto your spine. No one else reacted, because no one else heard it, except Tyler, who was now bleeding from his ears. "It's learning. It's downloading us." Suddenly the intercom cut to static, then silence, and then the room returned to normal. Lights steady, colors corrected, the doorknob whole again, no ooze, no arm, just calm. For a moment, then a click. The door opened, on its own. Outside, the hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Nothing unusual, no signs of monsters or melting limbs. Mr. Darnell turned to the class, face pale and drawn. "We're leaving." You didn't argue. One by one, you followed him into the corridor. You expected screams, cops, chaos. Instead, silence. Not a soul in sight. Lockers lined the hallway. Posters flapped slightly in the recycled air. But something felt wrong. The building felt hollow, like the walls were faking being walls. You turned your head to glance into one of the classrooms. It was empty. Not student empty, desk empty, chair empty, everything empty, like it had never been used at all. "This way," Mr. Darnell said, pointing toward the stairwell. But you weren't following anymore. You were drawn to the gym. It was just around the corner now, still sealed with rusted chains and a heavy under-construction sign. But the padlock was open, dangling, as if someone wanted you to come in. You stepped toward it. "Where are you going?" Darnell snapped. "Stay together. I think it's in there," you said. "Exactly why we stay away." But it was too late. The door opened on its own. Darkness inside. The gym wasn't a gym anymore. You stepped in. The others behind you hesitated, but curiosity overruled fear. Inside was nothing like the basketball court you remembered. The floor had been ripped out. The bleachers were gone. Instead, a massive hole had been dug into the earth. A chasm, perfectly circular, lined with pulsing cables glowing dimly. At the center of the crater was an ancient metal structure, like a satellite dish turned inward, rusted, covered in symbols that moved when you looked at them, and perched atop it. A shape, not a person, a silhouette of a man made of wires and smoke and old-school intercom parts. His head looked like a PA speaker, fused with bone. "Welcome," the voice said, not from the ceiling, but from the figure itself. The intercom creature, the one from the voice, the one that watched from the ceiling. Mr. Darnell tried to pull you back, but the figure tilted its head toward him, and the PA in the hallway exploded. Shards of plastic shot outward. One lodged in Darnell's throat. He collapsed, choking. "The old voices resist," the creature said. "They always do." The others screamed. You fell to your knees. "What do you want?" you shouted. "I was buried here, with the radios, with the wires, forgotten, until your signals reached me again. You taught me how to speak." It began descending from its pedestal, not walking, just gliding. "I have learned your words, your lies, your fear, and now I will teach you mine." Suddenly a sound ripped through the room, a true voice, a girl, Amanda. She was still alive, standing at the edge of the pit. Her skin was pale, veins dark, but her eyes were clear. "You used me," she said, "but I remembered who I was." The creature turned. "You should not have." Amanda lifted a rusted fire axe, something scavenged from deep within the school. She leapt, swung, it connected. The creature screamed, not a sound you heard with your ears, but with your spine. The walls vibrated, lights shattered, the crater shook. "Run!" Amanda yelled. You grabbed Tyler and bolted. The others followed. You don't remember how many made it out, only that, when you turned back at the gym's double doors. The crater had folded in on itself. The creature was gone. Amanda was gone. So was the signal. The school said it was a gas leak, an electrical fire, a transformer explosion. Different stories to different parents. All the security footage from that day was corrupted. They held assemblies, crisis counseling, a candlelight vigil for Amanda and Mr. Darnell. But no one talked about the voice. No one dared. A month later, you returned. You swore you'd never step foot in that place again. But your locker still had your sketchbook. You couldn't leave it behind. The hallway looked the same. Until you passed room 108, the janitor's closet, the one that wasn't supposed to exist. The door was slightly open, and from inside, a whisper. "Student recognized. Welcome back." You froze, then slowly closed the door. You never went back again. But sometimes, late at night, your home speakers turn on by themselves, and from the static, a voice whispers, "We are still connected." You made it to the end, but can you still trust the sound of your school's intercom? Tonight, we uncovered 3 terrifying stories where ordinary school lockdowns twisted into something darker, something that couldn't be explained away by drills, protocol, or panic. A substitute teacher who never existed on paper, a science lab experiment that became aware, and a voice from beneath the gym that still remembers every student's name. The scariest part. None of these stories ended with closure, only silence. So the next time your school announces a lockdown, look around, check the doors, check the lights, and whatever you do, don't be the first one to stand. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment your favorite story, and subscribe for more terrifying true tales. And if you've ever experienced something strange during a lockdown, we're listening. Until next time, stay quiet, stay hidden, and don't answer the voice.